Please stand for the pledge, and I'd like to ask you to remain standing afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to just remain standing. We'd like to observe a moment of silence for Jeffrey Smith, Howell High School senior, who was unfortunately and tragically killed in a head-on collision earlier this week and passed away late Friday evening. Thank you.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this meeting has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press issue of January 18, 2013. All municipal clerks of the townships and boroughs within the regional high school district have been duly notified, and requirements of posting of notices have been met. I'd like to have a motion for the improvement of the minutes. Any discussion?
Mr. Estola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Messenger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. Mazik?
Communications are on file in the board secretary's office. Superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. A few items this evening. We are well into January at this point in time, and that means that we are sort of in the heart of the budget process as we speak. We operate, particularly this year, in a little bit of a vacuum. So just the timeline to close the governor's address is scheduled for February 26th. And by law, state aid figures are released 48 hours after that address. There are a number of concerns this year with what state aid may or may not look like, given the impact of Hurricane Sandy. We simply don't know. So what the timeline in the budget process is a little bit difficult, because we will adopt a tentative budget on February 25th, absent the state aid figures, and then our formal budget will be put forth for formal board adoption on March 21st. So within that February 25th to March 21st, when really within February 26th and after, when we get the state aid figures, we've got about 3 weeks to really make the budget work. So that work is underway. The principals have submitted their building-based budgets. The various discipline-based directors have met with Mr. Boyce and are working on their particular budgets, and we've tried to prioritize our budget development in alignment with the strategic plan this year, so it is a work in progress at this point in time. We also continue to move forward with the teacher evaluation framework. For those of you who've been here in attendance, you've heard me talk about 3 major initiatives, charges from the state around teacher evaluation frameworks, around Common Core implementation, and ultimately around something that's known as PARC assessment. The state of New Jersey has approximately 30 districts that have been piloting the new teacher evaluation system. A number of us attended a panel discussion last week with about 10 of those districts, and the intent was really to glean some of the ideas of what was working, what was not working so well. The one positive that we heard is that the conversation around teaching and learning has been greatly enriched in these school districts, because there's a sort of a new emphasis on instructional best practices and how that plays out in the classroom and what effective instruction looks like. And those are all good conversations. One of the difficulties, though, is that the state has identified that a teacher will ultimately be evaluated on 50% teacher practice, what they do in the classroom, the strategies they employ, how they plan, how they go preparing for a class, and 50% student achievement. And these pilot districts, although some of them are more than a year into the process, the 50% of student achievement has not been really identified yet. And that's a difficulty. So we're operating a little bit blindly with information. We are awaiting a state correspondence that will come in March that is supposedly going to make a lot more of this very clear for us. But the state timelines are that this system is implemented for teachers and principals and administrators September 1, 2013. So if we get all the information in the world on March 1st, let's say, that gives us a couple months before the summer to really figure out how this is going to play out in our school district as of September 1, and that puts us in a very difficult position. We have spent an inordinate amount of time training our staff around the new teacher framework. We have a cadre of about 90 teachers that have gone through advanced training. All of our administrators have been trained. February 13th, we have a delayed opening for the whole faculty. We put together a presentation for the whole faculty on what the teacher evaluation requirements look like. So we are moving forward with that, but the timelines are incredibly difficult to meet. On a secondary note, with the park assessments, which is New Jersey's part of a consortium with I think 23 states, ultimately moving to online assessments. Now the initial implementation timeline for this was school year 2014 and 15, but there are a whole host of requirements that the school district needs to meet in order to be prepared for these assessments, including technology upgrades to our desktops, our student computers, and specific specs given to us from PARC. And that's an inordinate process in and of itself. And again, in terms of timelines, while this school year was supposed to be the second year of piloting PARC assessments, they're not there yet. So we're marching down these timelines that the folks who are supposed to be giving us some information aren't meeting themselves, puts the school systems, particularly in New Jersey, in a very difficult and I think precarious position because we're also charged with implementing Common Core standards simultaneously, which really results in almost an extensive overhaul of much of our curriculum throughout the district. So all three of these things are happening simultaneously and in a very difficult manner because we don't have a lot of information to work with it. So just updating the folks on where we are with that. On a positive note, the district Facebook page launched today. Launched at about 1:15 or so. By 5 o'clock, we had 271 likes, I'm pleased to report. So it's just another tool for the school district to push information out. There are a number, as a result of Hurricane Sandy, the communication protocols at that point in time, we heard from a number of parents, community members, students who were really attuned to Facebook, and it became a very powerful tool to communicate with during the storm. So we did get that up and running. We launched it today. There's a good deal of information on there. I don't have a Facebook account, so I can't log in myself, but it's just another tool in the toolkit to communicate. A couple other things that happened over the past few weeks. We were fortunate, a number of us, to attend the Central State annual dinner, and they celebrated 10 years of an anniversary with the Medical Sciences Learning Center at Freehold High School. Ms. Tomazic, myself, Dr. Hazel, and Linda Jewell, the principal of Freehold High School, were able to attend that event. And I do, coming on the heels of a year in which the Medical Sciences Learning Center won the Exemplary Program Award, the designation from school boards. They gave one of those out in the state. We won that largely on a lot of the work of Ms. Tomazic in writing the application as a board member and former student. It was a nice culminating activity for a 10-year anniversary to also win that award within the same year, and a nice feather in the cap of the school district. Throughout the district, over the past couple of weeks, we've completed our grade 8 orientations. Those were, as they always are every year, very, very well attended. We tend to have packed houses in all of our buildings because a number of folks from our K-8s will attend multiple orientation sessions as students apply to Learning Centers Academies as well and try to make an informed decision. And we've also, over the past few weeks, been conducting our National Honor Society inductions throughout our schools, which really some of the most well-done ceremonies that the school district engages in. If you have an opportunity to go to the National Honor Society induction at any of our schools, they're fantastic evenings. So, thank you.
Now for our board reports, Mr. Messenger.
Okay, last Monday night we had a finance committee meeting to really talk about concepts regarding the solar panel plan. The district spends almost $4 million on energy expenses per year. So what we're really trying to do here is implement a savings plan, use the savings from that, maybe it's just going with solar power, take that money and spend it on needed infrastructure, such as deteriorating boilers at Freehold High School. Now everyone recalls that we went through the ESCO process, we awarded a contract, and then we got, not that we, but the whole process, there was a legal, Pepco Energy actually sued, they didn't like the award process, and we've really come to the conclusion that if we go down the path of having the ESCO where we engage one company to do everything, it would just be continuing down a path of legal problems, where no matter who we awarded the contract to, the loser would end up suing. So you can go the independent way, where instead of engaging just one company, what you do is you engage an engineering firm, an architect, and a consultant. So what we did is we basically went over how the two different avenues differed. And of course, the architect told us what he would be doing differently than the ESCO would have done. So what we basically plan on doing is, from a committee standpoint, sometime between now and the end of February, the committee is going to come to a decision on which way to go. And we're kind of leaning on the independent model right now. So the game plan is to come to the full board for final approval to go the independent way by the end of February. And then we hope to have the, send out an RFP, make a decision on who we would employ to conduct the energy savings plan, to tell us how much we would have to spend and what the savings would be on the power costs. And then we really hope to, by the end of the school year, come to a conclusion as to who we would be hiring if it turns out we go down this path. And that was the only thing that was talked about in the meeting.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Sure, the curriculum committee met tonight, 6:24 p.m. We talked about agenda items, including the $4,000 that we won from Rain Alliance of New Jersey. The next step in that process is trying to win a driving simulator that our students can use. You'll also notice that the agenda is set up a little differently regarding field trips, and they're now in an Excel sheet, so it's easier to look at who's going where, what date, see if we can consolidate transportation. Another step in the strategic planning process was setting up magnet program advisory boards. That's going ahead. The current students and parents should be receiving an online survey to collect feedback on how to set up an evaluation tool to measure the success of our learning centers and academies. And the advisory board will be formed in late February, early March, and we'll go over that survey data so we come up with a tool that we can put in place in the spring. We also talked about a possible medical science program change, switching around AP Physics, which is usually in the senior year, and Biochemistry, which is usually in the junior year. The College Board is splitting up the AP Physics program, physics exam, so that there's a part 1 and part 2, if you will. So making this change would allow some students, if they choose, to take the part 2 in their senior year. And also, it was backed by letters from our MedSci Advisory Board, who believe this change would work.
Finance?
Now that one.
The policy committee met earlier this evening. Superintendent updated us on ongoing initiatives, specifically relative to the guidance advisory committee, its charge being looking at the grading structure and the possible implications and all of the nuances and implications of possible changes to the way we record and report grades. Also, as Mr. Masick just mentioned, the Magnet Program Advisory Board, again, relative to specific implications that might have on policy. The District Crisis Committee is ongoing, and I think it might be important to note that they started from an updated safety report that was issued before the tragedy in Newtown. So we were starting on a pretty good footing, on a report that was not ancient in its existence, and we've been updating that constantly with all of the new information that comes in that area. And as Mr. Sampson noted, the Facebook page went live earlier this afternoon, and there are some continuing initiatives that we hope to take advantage of to help push information out to the community in addition to Facebook.
Now it's time for public participation. I want to change you.
Regarding the agenda, just a couple comments. A yellow sheet addendum was put in the back. Just one change under H2. If you could take off Jennifer Green from your copy, eliminating that, Dr. Pegler, friends. And then just a couple other modifications under home instructors. Please change the name Camelia Cohen Fernandez to Camila Fernandez Cohen, and on attachment 1, under Freehold Township High School, the boys and girls golf change name to Jean Blanco. Okay, so those are the only changes that we do.
Floor is closed.
Good evening. This is in response to Mr. Messenger's comments published in the transcript dated January 23rd, 2013. Mr. Messenger still believes that referring to me as an unhinged lunatic and having a mental disability is okay. Mr. Messenger also arrogantly stated that it will be perfectly legal for him to publicly post his hateful messages as a campaign advertisement. Let me remind you, Mr. Messenger, school board elections are non-political in nature and are based on the characters of the candidates. As an elected school board member, you serve as a role model to the residents and most importantly to the students you represent. Mr. Messenger also stated that I have a learning disability, which actually undermines the seriousness of how difficult these illnesses really are and how they adversely impact students, families, and society in general. In stating that I have a mental disability, you are actually offending some of the students and their families that you represent. You also stated that you only intended a few people to hear your hateful comments. You even had the nerve to scold the person who shared your vicious comments with me. Mr. Messenger, you did not even have the courage to address me directly, knowing I have been regularly attending the Freeport regional meetings for more than 5 years. Instead, you try to hide behind your Facebook comments, just as other people are hiding their vicious and despicable comments about me as anonymous bloggers. Mr. Messenger, you also stated in the news transcript article that your comments were perfectly legal. I recognize that we have a free speech in the United States. Now you seem to be hiding behind our legal system. You cannot hide from your hateful, defaming comments. You stated that I brought this matter to the attention of the Commissioner of Education because I was the campaign manager of the former Marlboro rep, Mr. Barry Hacker. Wrong, Mr. Messenger. The reason I reported your conduct to Commissioner Cerf was because of your behavior as a board member. This bullying, intimidation, and defaming of one's character is not acceptable behavior of an elected board member. Yes, I was the campaign manager of Mr. Hacker. When he lost his bid for re-election, we all moved on. Mr. Messenger's campaign manager was Mr. Banisu Rosenwold, who repeatedly told me to stop supporting Mr. Hacker and to support Mr. Messenger instead. When I refused, Mrs. Rosenwald continued to contact me with the same request. The Republican campaign to re-elect the current mayor of Manalapan was held at the residence of Mrs. Sotera. I was asked several times to step outside the house by Mr. Mark Rosenwald, who is Mrs. Rosenwald's husband. When I refused, Mr. Rosenwald verbally threatened that if I decide to run for the Manalapan Freehold Regional seat on the board, they will destroy me the way they destroyed Barry Hacker. I eventually filed a police report regarding this incident. Since at that time the district was implementing the HE policy, I tried to discuss it in the public participation portion of the meeting. I was told by Mr. Sampson that it cannot be heard because it did not occur in the vicinity of the school and that the policy only applies among students. During the public participation at the last budget hearing, Mr. Messenger interrupted me when I was asking questions, and he accused me of having a personal vendetta towards him. Wrong again, Mr. Messenger. Mr. Messenger also referred to the senior citizens who attend the meetings as selfish. Senior citizens have as much right to question expenses as do other citizens. Mr. Messenger, you should show more respect for senior citizens. In conclusion, Mr. Messenger, you demonstrate a lack of respect for anyone whom you have a difference of opinion with. Not only have you insulted me, you have also insulted senior citizens and anyone with mental disabilities. This board should not in any way tolerate your unacceptable conduct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. First of all, I do agree with you about the comments I made being so hurtful to you, which is why I only told those comments to one person, Victoria Dean. She shared them with you. You've done your best, and they are bad comments. I'm criticizing you. You've spread them as far as you can. So I only told Victoria Dean on the Marlboro Board of Education my personal opinion. That was it. One person. You continue to spread them all around town trying to get attention. I, secondly, had no campaign manager, and you totally misrepresented what I said about senior citizens. I said, you spread it around. It's in writing. I said senior citizens who have no kids in the school and don't want to pay taxes are selfish because we all live, it's in writing. You spread it all around.
Yes.
And because basically anyone can make the argument. I can make an argument, I don't take Social Security, I don't take Medicare, why should I pay? That's what I said about senior citizens. My parents are senior citizens, and I don't want to hear anything about my saying senior citizens in general are selfish. I said a particular type, just like any citizen would be selfish if they didn't want to pay taxes. So, again, My comments, my critique of you went to one person, Victoria Dean. You are spreading it around to as many people as possible, and I don't know why.
May I say something quick? That's not true. I was informed by some residents in Manalapan prior to the election. I'm sorry.
Can't be. Again, you're just not stating the truth.
Okay,
You have no proof, and
Okay.
stop lying.
we've had a comment and response, thank you. Who's next one?
Leon?
As much as Mr. Sampson and Mr. Moses want to remind us that we're past the problems we experienced under the previous superintendent 5 years ago, I don't think we are. Recent events, which involve a city board member making disgusting charges against a candidate for the school board and hiding behind the advice of 2 attorneys telling him that his comments do not warrant an investigation, nor do they constitute any ethics violation, tells me otherwise. This is the same thing we heard from Mr. Wasser and his supporters to explain why he wasn't brought up on ethics charges. It seems that even though there wasn't a specific reference to getting a bogus doctorate degree in the Code of Ethics, it was obviously wrong and unethical. Now we see Mr. Messenger is relying on the same lame set of rules to protect his vile comments about Mrs. Close. What we should be talking about are personal ethics and morals. Many of us are aware that the first group of eligible candidates for the Baseball Hall of Fame from the steroid era were rejected by the Baseball Writers Association, and of the major fall from his mythical Olympic pedestal by Lance Armstrong, as he finally admitted his obvious use of performance-enhancing drugs. These are major ethical lapses by those whom many regarded as sports heroes. This is a great learning experience for our students to understand that personal ethics and morality matter, and the lack thereof can ultimately bring disastrous results. In the case of this recent election for the Manalapan seat on the board, it began, as Mrs. Close told you, in October of this past year, when she announced her campaign. One of the major supporters of Mr. Messenger threatened to destroy Mrs. Close the same way they destroyed Mr. Hochberg. She felt that threat seriously enough to file a police report. We're talking about an unpaid volunteer position for a school board seat. That incident led to months of vile, anonymous personal attacks, demeaning her education, her personal life, and ultimately her mental capacity. All of this during a time of increased awareness programs by the superintendent regarding bullying, harassment in the schools. But of course we were told it doesn't matter what adults do. In other words, do as I say, not as I do. Now, because this infection of hateful invective was allowed to fester as long as it did, it has now metastasized into Mr. Messenger, thinking that it is okay to call Mrs. Close an unhinged lunatic who is either a liar or has a learning disability. I don't care whether he said it in a personal message to a friend or shouted it from his rooftop. The sad fact is that he thought it and said it and signed his name to it. As a school board member, he's responsible for making decisions and voting on issues that pertain to all kinds of students in the district, some of whom have learning disabilities. For him to think it appropriate to frivolously use those terms as a form of derision against a candidate for the school board, especially at a time of heightened awareness regarding the seriousness of mental illness in our society, demonstrates a genuine lack of sensitivity to those over whom some of his decisions might ultimately affect. Mrs. Close is one of the most caring and responsible people I've ever met. Her long history in Manalapan helping those in need is beyond question. Just as Mr. Messenger believes that he is above legal or ethical reproach because he alleges that he spoke for himself and not the board, how about you showing some deserved respect for Mrs. Close and speaking out yourselves and tell her that he does not speak for you.
Rhoda?
Really swallowed now. Okay, as a teacher, I definitely am appalled by all this. There is a connection between school and community. Learning involves what students absorb within the walls of academia as well as what they read or hear outside the school environment. They learn what is acceptable and what is not. They learn that adults don't always set a good example. What lessons could they come away with from the recent board election? It's okay to lie, to demean, and do and say anything in the name of winning. Isn't it better to keep one's dignity than to use any means whatsoever to score points to win an election? Resorting to using underhanded tactics, calling someone you disagree with mentally unstable and worse, has no place in the school board election. Resorting to verbal attacks as a board member is unseemly, undignified, and just plain wrong. A board member should be held to a higher standard. Mr. Messenger's attacks against Ms. Close demonstrates very poor judgment on his part. His egregious, vulgar comments should not be considered acceptable behavior by anyone, including other board members, who have the responsibility of setting an example to the people they represent. It's important to note this, that in the course of the campaign, neither Ms. Utera nor Ms. Close ever made any negative comments about each other. They ran the kind of respectful campaign that should set an example for others. The problem arose when a small group of people opposed to Ms. Close hid behind their anonymity and attempted to destroy her character, insulted her educational background, and subjected her and her family to personal ridicule. Unfortunately, Mr. Messenger got caught up in this web of personal destruction and signed his name to an ugly email. He has shown no remorse, and according to his comments in the news transcript, still thinks his characterization is warranted. Such arrogance. His words and actions are totally unacceptable because they do not set a positive example for our students. With all due respect about the issue of bullying in schools, students learn and adopt many of the behaviors from the adults around them. The HIP programs are useful, but should also be extended to those adults who are part of the school system, staff, and board members. You made it clear to all of us that you cannot discipline Mr. Messenger for his comments. However, your lack of public support on this matter can also indicate to students you condone what he said. I call it the educational wall of silence. You see, when I taught school, I saw a lot of things going on in the teacher's room. I heard a lot of disparaging remarks, but at that time I really was part of the educational wall of silence. For fear, I didn't want to come forward. I didn't want to say anything against a fellow teacher, a fellow supervisor, administrator. But you know what? The time has come for me to speak out. And I hope that teachers, supervisors, parents lose their fear of speaking out. It's very important for kids to speak out. It's important for them to learn that if there is something wrong, they should definitely be participating in bringing that wrong to the public. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
415 likes. That's all. We have 415 likes on Facebook now.
Oh, okay, thank you. Anybody else? I'd like a motion if we could take the whole agenda and... Motion. Any discussions?
I'm sorry I didn't ask this sooner, but on page 7, the third item down, just under change of status, it notes listed on board minutes of April 23rd, attachment number 1. Is the attachment number 1 on April 23rd? Okay, because attachment one here
Doesn't
has
matter.
nothing to do with it. My other question on this item, is this a new position?
Transportation dispatcher, yes.
It is a new. It is a new position.
Yeah, it's a, well, we've had some turnover in staff down there, and so while we did not fill another position that was vacated, we filled this position because there was a greater need for someone with that kind of experience to be able to manage situations, typically in the afternoon with activity runs. So somebody with that level of experience and then could give direction to drivers is what we're looking for.
I mean, I know her personally, good character, good character.
And one of the reasons that I pussyfooted around is I know the individual,
Yeah.
and never having seen the position of dispatcher before.
Yeah, it actually was, my understanding before I got here, but that position was something that we've had in the past. I know this is going back 3 years now. When the state needed to make some significant budget cuts, of course, every component of this organization felt that. Transportation in particular felt that. So as opportunities come up to structure it based on now having a few years' experience with the revised staffing structures, if there's better ways to do it, and within the same financial constraints that we have, when we have an opportunity to do that, that's what we do.
Oh, absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
essential.
So we're not going to be looking to replace one of the positions that was recently vacated.
Correct. Correct. It's not an additional, it's different.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, discussions?
Mr. Asatola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sotera?
Yes.
Mr. Madden?
Yes.
Yeah.